to Raghu say thank you so much for giving us some time today. I know you're incredibly busy. You've done many, many years in the army, and where you've been working with lots of large corporates with their leadership teams, and you're also an author. You also do a lot of TED Talks. Obviously, the military use VUCA. Leadership has, or corporates have adopted this term, you know, in leadership. So how do leaders adapt to a VUCA environment in current corporates?
You know, you are right in saying that the term VUCA originated from the US military, as the legend goes, because when they compare it with the first Gulf War and the second Gulf War, when they came in for the first time to oust Saddam Hussein at that point of time, they came in and faced a traditional army. The second time around when they went into Iraq and to Afghanistan, the environment that they faced was completely different. Now they were not fighting another army, they're fighting formless stuff. There was no number one, number two. So in many ways, this was an environment which was volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, complex for them. And that is why they coined an acronym for it called the VUCA. VUCA, I think, is an excuse that a leader can give only for a certain period of time. Because the fact that the environment has changed, the fact that it has become a volatile environment, the fact that it is a complex environment is now part of the environment. And of course, a pandemic like this will come, nobody could have predicted. If you have leaders who are in a VUCA environment, and there is one set of leaders who says, you know what, this VUCA, I'm beginning to understand it now. I know it's ambiguous, so I have to make a decision with maybe about 50-60% of the information, not wait for the 100% information. So I'm okay to operate in that environment. Or I think this is complex, but I can still handle the complexity. Those leaders will start delivering and they'll start functioning.
So what I've heard is that there's obviously a lot more data that is around, so we can make, you know, decisions based on that data. But the 40% where there is no data, we have to use our gut.
They basically say that taking a decision with less than 40% of information is, you know, shooting from the hip, you're winging it. And waiting for more than 70% of the information to come into you, it's not marginal value add is not worth the time trade-off. It's better that you take the decision now. So I think we all operate somewhere in that range, and that is the new normal. I mean, it's been the new normal for a fairly long time. We are recognizing it now, that even if you have tons of data that comes into you today, you really cannot go through all of that information. You have to say, okay, I'm going to pick 4 or 5 major issues and work on them.
So obviously you work with a lot of corporates. What are you experiencing at the leadership level at the moment?
So we navigate the world with certain stereotypes and certain maps. Now, in paradigm shift, what happens is that these maps, they change dramatically. If you're working with maps of the previous era, then they won't be very helpful to navigate the world of the future. For instance, when I was a young CEO and I was pitching for my company to get funding, at that point of time, many of the VCs would ask a question that, what if this does not succeed? What's your plan B? And the right answer to give during those days was, I have no plan B. They didn't want CEOs who are wishy-washy, that I have a plan B and a plan C. And now VCs are looking for CEOs who have plan C and D.
So what would your advice be from working with many companies and many leaders on how you update your map?
The issue always is, how quickly do you recognize what implication the changes have in your business at 3 levels. At a fundamental level. I'm sure millions of customers have moved now from the mindset of physical retail and moved into online shopping. And for many of the items, they are unlikely to move back. The second is, how does it affect that person's or the person's business? And how, therefore, may you look at the services that you were erstwhile taking to the market? And third is to be able to spot opportunities from that.
Have you got a view on what sort of traits you need to look for? Sort of behavioural traits you need to look for in an individual?
So whenever I look at a leadership team, I think about it in 3 ways. The first way I think is that, how does that individual know how to play the game? The second is that after having the competence, is the person doing the right things, right? Now, what happens is, this is where a lot of people actually make a mistake, because now leaders who have always had a persona that I know everything and I need to maintain that facade, actually the leader is only kidding himself or herself, because everyone else knows that, but that belief that I know everything, these leaders will find it very tough during a paradigm shift.
If you are sitting as a CEO of an organisation, and you know, big company, you've got a big leadership team, and you know you've operated in one way all of the time. You know, how do you maybe know who's going to be able to work and take your company forward? And you know that you have a team that isn't quite right. It's not quite where you need them to be. What would your advice be to them? Would you upskill? Would you change them quite quickly? What are your thoughts?
So I believe that leaders at this point of time, we need not just realistic leaders, we need optimistic leaders. Because hope is one of the jobs of a leader. The leader's job is to constantly scan the environment to look for silver linings. Because dark clouds any idiot can see. And managers are hired to manage, leaders are hired to inspire. And inspiration is not required when the market is doing very well. I look at it in a sense, it's a good environment, it's a chaotic environment. It kind of stirs up the pool all over again. All set hierarchies go for a space shift, which is a great place to be.
Listen, thank you so much
Thanks
for your time
for the time,
today.
Iman. Great talking to you too.
I mean, I've got loads out of it actually, just listening to you.
Thanks for the time.
And I think everyone else will, to be honest. So thank you very
Thank
very
you.
much indeed. And I'd like to circle back round.
We'll do that. Take care of yourself.